used to think I knew Melissa better than anyone else in the world. After 25 years of marriage, you start believing that nothing can surprise you anymore, that you can read the person beside you like an open book. We had built a life together in a quiet suburb of Seattle, filled with routines that felt comforting in their predictability. Mornings were for coffee and laughter. Evenings were for shared meals, soft music, and conversations that stretched into the night. But that October, something changed. It started with little things. Subtle shifts I might have missed if I hadn't known her so well. She began dressing up more often. Not for us, not for family dinners, not for work meetings. Her perfume changed too. It wasn't the familiar floral scent she'd worn for years. This one was sharper, heavier, lingering in the air long after she left the room. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she just wanted to feel young again. We were both getting older after all. But then she started guarding her phone like it held state secrets. When I walked into the room, she'd quickly turn the screen away. Sometimes she'd force a smile and say, "Just work stuff, Daniel." But her voice lacked the warmth I used to hear. And her eyes told a story her lips refused to admit. One night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Our wedding picture. The kids' graduation. Family trips to the coast. All those moments felt like they belonged to someone else now. Someone who didn't have to wonder who their wife was texting at midnight. The silence between us grew thicker every day. At breakfast, she'd scroll through her phone while pretending to listen to me. At dinner, she'd eat in a hurry, saying she had papers to grade or calls to make. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But there's a kind of quiet that screams the truth. And every night, that silence was screaming at me. One evening, I decided to follow her. I told myself it wasn't because I didn't trust her, I just needed peace of mind. She said she was meeting colleagues for a late meeting at a downtown cafe. I parked a few blocks away, my hands trembling against the steering wheel. Through the rain-specked windshield, I saw her, my wife, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. He was younger, maybe mid-40s, sharp suit, confident smile. They laughed together like teenagers, the kind of laughter Melissa hadn't shared with me in months. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. It felt like watching someone else's life crumble from the outside. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. When she came home hours later, smelling faintly of the new perfume, I pretended to be asleep. But I could hear her moving quietly in the dark, as if she didn't want to disturb the ghost of a husband she'd already left behind. The next morning, while she showered, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand. My hands shook as I picked it up. The lock screen glowed with a single name, Ryan Carter. A message previewed beneath it. Just 4 words that shattered everything. Can't stop thinking about you. I dropped the phone like it burned my skin. In that moment, the truth became a living thing inside me, cold, sharp, and impossible to kill. For the next few days, I went through the motions. I smiled when she smiled. I said, "I love you" when she did. But every word felt like an echo in an empty house. I started keeping notes, dates, times, the little changes that didn't add up. Finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I called an old friend, a retired police officer named Ethan Walsh. He'd started working as a private investigator after leaving the force. I told him everything, though the words barely came out. He didn't judge me. He just said, "Give me a week, Daniel. I'll find the truth for you." A week. 7 days to confirm what I already knew but couldn't face. Those were the longest days of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd look at her across the dinner table and feel both love and disgust twisting inside me. Every smile felt like a lie, every touch like betrayal. When the call finally came, Ethan's voice was low and careful. "I think you should come to my office." That night, I sat in the dim light of his downtown office as he slid a brown envelope across the table. Inside were photographs, Melissa and the man from the cafe, laughing, holding hands, entering a motel on the outskirts of Seattle. My throat went dry. My vision blurred. Ethan didn't say much, he didn't have to. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the evidence of a life I no longer recognized. The woman I loved, the life I built, all reduced to glossy prints that smelled faintly of cheap ink and rain. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't sound like my own. "Thank you, Ethan," I said quietly. "I know what I have to do." Outside, the city lights shimmered through the drizzle. I watched them blur and fade, thinking how easily something bright could disappear in the rain. That night, I drove home in silence. Melissa was asleep when I walked in. I stood there for a long time, watching her breathe, trying to remember what it felt like to trust her. But trust, once broken, doesn't mend. It only leaves scars. And in that quiet October night, I realized the truth. Our marriage wasn't ending because of one affair. It had been dying for years. I just hadn't been brave enough to see it. The night I decided to confront her, Seattle was drowned in rain. The kind that comes sideways, hammering against the windows like it wants to be let in. The house felt heavier than usual, as if it already knew what was about to happen. I sat in the living room with the lights off, the brown envelope resting on my lap like a weight I couldn't bear to hold or let go. I'd gone through those photographs 100 times, but they didn't lose their sting. Every glance felt like a knife twisting deeper. Melissa's smile, the tilt of her head, the way her fingers wrapped around his, those were things that used to belong to me. Now they were evidence. At 10:17 p.m. I heard the garage door hum open. My chest tightened. She came in humming softly, shaking off the rain, her heels clicking against the hardwood. The smell of her new perfume drifted in before she did. Sweet. Heavy. Wrong. She didn't see me at first. She was on her phone, laughing quietly. Then she froze when she noticed the faint glow of the fireplace and my silhouette in the chair. Daniel? She said softly, unsure. Why are you sitting in the dark? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, thick enough for her to feel it pressing against her chest. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, too calm. Who's Ryan? Her eyes widened, and in that instant, everything she'd been hiding flashed across her face. The shock, the fear, the quick calculation of whether she should lie or tell the truth. I don't know what you mean, she whispered. I placed the envelope on the coffee table and slid it toward her. The sound of paper scraping would felt deafening. Open it. Her hands trembled as she lifted the flap. One by one the photos spilled out. Her breath caught when she saw them, the cafe, the motel, the laughter that didn't belong to us anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not this time. Daniel, please, she started, her voice cracking. It's not what it looks like. I swear it was just. Don't. My voice rose, sharp enough to cut through her excuses. Don't you dare insult me with that line. You think I don't know what I'm looking at? She covered her face, sobbing now. I could hear the guilt in every breath, but I couldn't find forgiveness anywhere inside me. How long? I asked. She didn't answer. How long, Melissa? Her shoulders shook. A few months, she whispered. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to. I laughed, a sound that didn't feel like mine. Things like that don't just happen. You made a choice. Every time you texted him, every time you lied to me, every time you smiled at me knowing you were giving yourself to someone else, you made a choice. She looked up then, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Daniel. Please believe me, it didn't mean anything. That was the worst part. The way she said it, it didn't mean anything, like our marriage could be broken for nothing. Like I was supposed to feel better knowing her betrayal was meaningless. I stood up slowly, the room spinning around me. You know what hurts the most? I said quietly. It's not that you cheated. It's that you thought you could lie forever. That you thought I'd never see it. Daniel, please? No, I held up a hand. You made your choices. Now I'll make mine. Her eyes darted to the envelope again. What are you going to do? I turned away, unable to look at her. What I should have done weeks ago. That night, after she locked herself in the bedroom, I sat in my study until dawn. I went through our finances, every shared account, every asset. I contacted an attorney first thing in the morning. A quiet, precise woman who didn't ask questions she didn't need to. By noon, the paperwork was drafted. Divorce petition, property division, spousal support. Clean, efficient, merciless. But I wasn't done. I wanted the truth to mean something. So I made copies of the photos and messages and sent them anonymously to Laura Carter, Ryan's ex-wife. She had the right to know. I also forwarded them to the head principal at the school where Melissa worked. Maybe it was cruel. Maybe it was justice. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. When I returned home that evening, Melissa was gone. The closet was half empty, her suitcase missing. There was a note on the counter written in shaky handwriting. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Please don't destroy me. I crumpled the paper in my hand and threw it away. For the first time in years, the house was silent. Truly silent. No music, no footsteps, no warmth. Just rain tapping against the windows and the faint echo of a life that used to be mine. Over the next few days, the fallout spread fast. Laura Carter filed for custody modification, citing moral misconduct. The school suspended Melissa pending investigation. And Ryan Carter, the man who thought he could steal another man's wife and walk away, watched his career collapse in public shame. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. Revenge didn't bring peace. It just left a different kind of emptiness. Every night, I sat in the darkened living room listening to the rain. The house felt haunted not by ghosts but by memories. I thought about our wedding vows, about the woman I'd loved, about the man I used to be before all of this. And slowly, beneath all the anger and exhaustion, something began to shift. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was survival. Because when the storm finally passed, I knew I wouldn't be the same man who had waited in the dark. The days that followed felt like living inside a hollow version of my own life. Every corner of the house held echoes of Melissa. Her laughter, her scent, her ghost lingering in the spaces she once filled. I walked through the rooms like a stranger, not sure if I missed her or just the comfort of routine. The walls felt closer now, suffocating in their quietness. The divorce moved quickly. I didn't fight for anything except the truth. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Grant, handled it with precision. When she asked if I wanted to contest the settlement, I simply said, no. I just wanted to end. By December, the papers were signed. 25 years reduced to a few sheets of legal ink and signatures that barely looked like our names. I didn't attend the final meeting in person. My attorney did. Melissa didn't look at me once during the video conference. Her voice trembled when she spoke, but her eyes stayed dry. Maybe she had already run out of tears. The next morning, I woke up alone, officially, legally, irreversibly alone. And yet, somewhere deep inside, I felt lighter. Not happy, not free, but lighter. That afternoon, I took a walk through our neighborhood. The air was cold and sharp, carrying the smell of pine and wet pavement. Every house I passed seemed to belong to another world, the kind where laughter still echoed and promises still meant something. When I reached the small cafe where I'd once seen Melissa with Ryan, I stopped outside. Through the glass, the same barista was working, the same smell of espresso filled the air. But the memory hit me differently this time. I wasn't angry, just tired. I walked past without going in. For the first time, I didn't need to look back. At home, I packed away the wedding photos and the souvenirs from our trips. I didn't throw them out, not yet. I just couldn't keep them where they could breathe the same air as me. The photo of us at Mount Rainier went into a box labeled past. I taped it shut. A few weeks later, our children came to visit. Jacob, 22, and Emily, 19. They had heard the rumors, of course. News travels fast when betrayal is involved. Jacob barely spoke to me. Emily tried to comfort me but ended up crying herself. Dad, she whispered, I don't know how to feel about Mom. Neither do I said quietly. She nodded, her eyes red. I just wish it hadn't happened. So do I replied. But wishing doesn't change the truth. They left that evening and I watched their car disappear into the drizzle. The house felt emptier than ever after that. Weeks turned into months. Winter came and Seattle became a painting of gray skies and cold streets. I kept myself busy fixing things that didn't need fixing. The leaky faucet, the garage door, even repainting the study. But no matter what I did, the silence always returned. Sometimes I caught myself expecting to hear Melissa's voice calling my name from another room. I'd freeze, waiting, before realizing it was only the creak of the house settling. One night, around midnight, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the park near our old school, her school. From the streetlight, I could see her car parked outside the main building. She must have been cleaning out her classroom after hours. For a long moment, I considered walking over. Maybe to say something, anything. But I didn't. I watched her from a distance, carrying boxes to her car, her shoulders hunched beneath the rain. She looked smaller somehow, fragile. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt pity. The woman I had loved wasn't standing there anymore. Only the shell of her. I turned and walked away before she could notice me. In March, she sent me a message. Just one. I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. I could have replied. A simple I am would have been enough. But I didn't send anything. Because the truth was, I wasn't okay. Not yet. But I was getting there. Spring came late that year. The rain softened, the skies lightened, and slowly so did I. I sold the house in April. Too many ghosts lived there and I was done living with them. The real estate agent asked if I wanted to stage the house for showings, but I told her no. Let it be what it is, honest. A home that once held love and now held lessons. I moved into a small apartment near Puget Sound. The first night there, I stood by the window watching the ferries cross the dark water, their lights gliding like distant stars. I didn't feel lost anymore. I felt in motion, like life was finally shifting forward. I joined a hiking group on a whim. I thought maybe being surrounded by strangers would help me feel human again. The first hike was rough. I was out of breath, my legs burning, but when I reached the top, something in me eased. The view of the Cascades stretched endlessly beneath a sky that looked almost forgiving. And as the wind rushed past my face, I realized something important. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember what's real. Not revenge. Not anger. Just clarity. That night, I slept without dreams for the first time in months. The silence no longer scared me. It became a companion. I didn't know it then, but that quiet, that calm after the storm, was only the beginning of who I was meant to become. The months that followed felt like learning how to breathe again. There was no one waiting for me at home anymore, no voice calling from the kitchen, no warmth beside me in bed. At first, that emptiness felt unbearable. I'd wake up and listen to the silence, half expecting the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. But the silence stayed. It didn't fade, it changed. Silence, I realized, could be cruel, but it could also be clean. My apartment overlooked Puget Sound, where ferries came and went beneath streaks of morning light. Each sunrise felt like a small rebirth. I started running along the shoreline, slow at first, just to feel my heart beat again. I wasn't chasing anything. I was escaping the weight of everything I had carried. Melissa had tried to reach out a few more times. Short messages. Can we talk? I miss the kids. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't block her either. I wanted her words to sit there, unseen but visible, like the shadow of something that used to matter. One evening, Jacob called. He was in college now, busy with his own life, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Dad, have you talked to Mom lately? No, I said. He was quiet for a moment. She's not doing great. Lost her job. Had to move out of the city. I know, I replied. Ethan told me. Jacob sighed. She asked about you. What did you tell her? That you're trying to heal. That word, heal, stuck with me long after the call ended. Healing wasn't the same as forgetting. It was learning how to live with the wound without reopening it. A few days later, I opened one of Melissa's messages. It wasn't an apology this time. It was a photo. She'd taken it from her new classroom, a small one, probably in some rural district. The caption read, "Trying to start over." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel rage anymore, or sadness, or the urge to punish her again. Just a dull ache, the kind you feel when you finally understand that love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it's just a chapter, one that ends whether you want it to or not. I didn't reply, but that night I whispered something into the dark. I forgive you. Not for her. For me. Life after that began to move. I started joining more hikes with the local group. There was something purifying about climbing, the slow rhythm of breath and effort, the burn in the muscles, the view that waited like a reward for every painful step. One morning I met Clara Mitchell. She was leading a yoga and hiking session at the trailhead, her calm voice giving instructions as we stretched under the pines. She was probably in her late 40s, with kind eyes and the kind of presence that made silence feel safe. When she smiled at me, it wasn't the smile of someone curious about my past. It was the smile of someone who had her own. During the hike, she walked beside me. "You're new to this group," she said lightly. "Yeah," I replied. Still trying to figure out why I joined. "Most people come here looking for something," she said. "Peace maybe. Or themselves." I smiled faintly. Maybe both. We talked easily, not about pain but about simple things. The sound of running water, her favorite trails, the way Seattle looked at sunrise from Mount Si. For the first time in months I laughed. Really laughed. At the summit the wind was sharp and cold. Clara stood beside me, her hair caught in the gust, and said softly, "You know what I love about hiking? You have to climb through the pain before the view makes sense." I looked at her, the words settling deep inside me. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know what you mean." After that day we started seeing each other more often. Coffee after hikes, long walks by the waterfront, quiet dinners where neither of us needed to fill the silence. She didn't ask much about Melissa, and I didn't ask about her past. Some stories are better left folded between the lines. But even with Clara's calm presence, the ghosts of my marriage still lingered. There were nights when I'd wake up and reach for someone who wasn't there. Nights when guilt whispered that maybe I'd been too harsh, that maybe revenge had cost me a part of my soul. I started seeing a therapist, something I'd once sworn I'd never do. Her name was Dr. Lynn, and she listened more than she spoke. One afternoon she asked me, "Daniel, what do you think forgiveness really means to you?" I thought for a long time before answering. "It means letting go of the story where I'm the victim," I said. "It means accepting that it happened and I survived." She smiled softly. "Then you're already halfway there." Forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was a long walk through uneven terrain, some days steep, some days easy. But each step took me farther from the bitterness that had anchored me for so long. By summer I could look back without flinching. Melissa had found steady work again in a small town north of Tacoma. She sent me a message saying she'd reconnected with Emily. That was enough for me. The kids didn't need to choose sides anymore. They just needed peace. And so did I. One late afternoon, Clara and I hiked up Rattlesnake Ridge. The sun dipped behind the trees, scattering gold across the lake below. As we reached the top, I felt something I hadn't in years, stillness that didn't hurt. Clara looked at me and smiled. You seem lighter these days. I guess I am, I said. It took losing everything to realize I was never meant to carry it all. We stood there together, the wind brushing against our faces, and for the first time since that October night, I wasn't haunted by what had been. I was grateful for what remained. The past had taken so much, but it had given me something too, a second chance at peace. And as the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and silence, I understood what forgiveness truly was. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about finally learning how to live again. By autumn, almost a year had passed since that night in October. Time hadn't erased the pain, but it had softened its edges, worn it smooth like sea glass. I no longer woke up angry or fell asleep bitter. The silence that once haunted me had become something else entirely, a space where I could breathe, think, and exist without fear. I still lived in the same apartment overlooking Puget Sound. Mornings were my favorite now. The light broke across the water, scattering silver reflections on the waves, and for the first time in decades, I didn't dread waking up alone. There was peace in simplicity, coffee, quiet, and the faint hum of ferries crossing the bay. Melissa's name hadn't appeared on my phone in months. She'd found her footing again, teaching at a smaller school. From what I'd heard through Jacob, she was doing better. I didn't hate her anymore. Hate requires energy, and I'd already given too much of myself to things I couldn't change. My children visited more often. Jacob brought his girlfriend once, a shy young woman named Lydia who smiled the way Melissa used to back when love was still simple. Emily had started art school, full of color and rebellion. We sat together on the balcony one evening, watching the sun melt into the horizon. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Emily said suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "For not letting it break you." I smiled. "It did break me. But I built something new from the pieces." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time, I believed the words I said. That winter, Clara and I grew closer. She had a gentle patience I didn't know I needed. We spent weekends hiking through the snow-dusted trails around Mount Baker, her laughter echoing through the trees like wind chimes. She never asked me to be anyone other than who I was. She didn't try to fix me, didn't fill the silence with questions. She just walked beside me, step for step, as if she understood that healing isn't found in words but in presence. One Saturday she invited me to join her on a group expedition to Mount Rainier, the same mountain from our old photo, the one Melissa and I had visited years ago. For a moment I hesitated. It felt like reopening a door I'd already closed. But then I realized, maybe it was time to face that memory and rewrite it. The climb was steep, the air thin and biting, but every step felt lighter than the one before. The higher we went, the smaller the world below became. The city, the pain, the noise, all fading into distance. By the time we reached the summit, clouds stretched like oceans beneath us. Clara stood beside me, breathing hard, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. I nodded, staring out at the endless blue. "Yeah. You can see everything from up here." She smiled. "Sometimes you have to climb high enough to realize what really matters." I turned to her, the wind whipping through my jacket, and said, "That's exactly what I told myself a long time ago. I just didn't know how true it was." We stood there in silence, looking down at the world that once felt too heavy to carry. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who sat in the dark, waiting for truth and bleeding from it. That man was gone now, buried under the miles of trail behind me. In his place stood someone new, someone who understood that loss wasn't the end of life, but the clearing before something better could grow. As the sun began to set, Clara reached out and took my hand. Her grip was warm, steady. For a long time we didn't speak. There was no need. The moment said everything. Later, as we descended the mountain, the sky painted itself in orange and violet streaks. I stopped one last time to look back at the peak, glowing gold against the dying light. That mountain had watched over my worst years, and now, it witnessed my rebirth. I smiled, breathing in the cold air. "You know," I said, "for the first time in a long time I feel free." Clara looked at me, her eyes bright. "Maybe you always were. You just needed to climb high enough to see it." We walked down the trail hand in hand, our footprints fading behind us in the soft snow. The wind carried the last light of day through the evergreens, and in that glow, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace without pain, love without fear, and a quiet certainty that life, in all its cruelty and beauty, had finally come full circle. When we reached the base, the sky had turned dark, scattered with stars. I tilted my head back and let the cold air fill my lungs. The world felt wide again, endless and alive. For the first time since that October night, I wasn't looking back anymore. The past was behind me, distant, silent, forgiven. And ahead of me stretched everything that was still waiting to begin.